friends, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about HDR on your mobile phone and what it is, why you need it, and why sometimes you need to turn it off. Now, there are two main types of HDR use. The first one is in photography, of course, and this is one in particular has been around for a while. After all, video is just many images in succession to create movement. But in this video, we're talking about photos on your mobile and the HDR aspect of it. First of all, what's HDR? Well, it stands for High Dynamic Range. It is an imaging technique used in photography or video to reproduce a greater dynamic range of luminosity than what is possible with standard digital imaging or photographic techniques. Now, standard techniques allow differentiation only within a certain range of brightness. Outside of this range, no features are visible because there is no differentiation in bright areas, as everything appears to be just pure white. And there's no differentiation in dark areas, as everything appears to be pure black. One aim of HDR is to present a similar range of luminosity to that experienced through the human visual system, the human eye. Though non-linear response, adaptation of the iris, and other methods adjust consistently to adapt to a broad range of luminescence present in the environment. You see, the brain continuously interprets the information so that a viewer can see in wide range of light conditions. Now, in photography, dynamic range is measured in exposure value, EV. The difference is known as stops. An increase of 1 EV or 1 stop represents a doubling of the amount of light. Conversely, a decrease of 1 EV represents a halving of the amount of light. Therefore, revealing details in the darkest of shadows requires high exposures, while preserving detail in a very bright situation requires very low exposures. Now, most cameras cannot provide this range of exposure values within a single exposure or single photo due to their low dynamic range. High dynamic range photographs are generally achieved by capturing multiple standard exposure images, often using exposure brackets, and then later merging them into a single HDR image, usually within a photo manipulating program. Now, a few years ago, you may have noticed that when you enable HDR on your mobile device, the phone itself would lag when taking a photo. You wouldn't get that snappy click like before. It is a very similar experience for DSLR cameras. A HDR photo sometimes takes a little more time, and you may even hear a few clicks. Having a steady hand also helps, otherwise you might get an image of ghosting if the exposure is set too long on a DSLR camera. But this can also happen with your phone if you just move it too much and get a HDR photo. Things will just look like it's ghosting. Many new cameras will take multiple shots, and it's usually about 3, and merge them together. Many mobile devices now even start to store short videos in the phone's RAM, which is random access memory, as soon as you open the camera. You then have a data for before and after you take a photo. You can easily see that in Apple's live images. But it also helps with HDR and in capturing the best photo. But what does it mean for you? Well, it is designed to help you take better looking photos after all, especially in certain situations, but not all. So here is where you should use HDR. Big landscape photos usually have a lot of contrast between the sky and land, which is difficult for your camera to deal with in just one photo. With HDR, you can capture the sky's detail without making the land look too dark, and vice versa. So landscape photos, HDR, good. Portraits in sunlight is also good. You see, lighting is one of the most important aspects of a good photo, but too much lighting on someone's face can cause dark shadows, bright glare, and other bad characteristics. HDR can even that all out and make your subject look better across a brightly lit background. If your photo is looking a little dark, which often happens if your scene has too much backlight, HDR can brighten up the foreground without washing out the well-lit portions of your photo. So good on HDR there. And of course, where you shouldn't, because some of the marketing of this feature makes it seem like it's autopilot for National Geographic photos. But in fact, sometimes HDR actually makes your photos look even worse. So here's where you shouldn't consider using HDR. Any photos with movement. Obviously, it makes sense. You see, if any of your subjects are moving, HDR increases the chance of a blurry photo. As your device takes 3 separate photos, there's still a delay between each shot. If your subject moves, you could end up proving that Casper the Friendly Ghost exists. Some photos look better with stark contrast between the dark and the light parts of a photo. Like if you have a dark shadow or silhouette, you want the highlight. So HDR will make this less intense, resulting in a less interesting photo. This is more of an artistic choice. Finally, if your scene is too dark or too light, HDR can bring some of the color back. However, if you're dealing with colors that are already very vivid, HDR will wash them out. Some of these depend on what style and look you're going for, but HDR is certainly not a magic pill to make you the next Robert Capa. You at least need a war for that. In today's landscape of mobile phones, more and more companies are touting AI systems that will help you take the best photos. These AI systems will understand the image you're trying to capture and decide if you should use HDR or a different implementation. However, at this stage, it's still hit and miss. Many phones out there don't always make the right decisions, and I do believe that in the future they will, and we're getting there. But at this stage, you are still the best person to ask if you need HDR on or off. Friends, I hope this video has helped you understand HDR on your phone. Good luck out there, use the knowledge now to get better photos every time. If you like this video, then tap that like button. If you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and bye!